All right. Well, hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of Triple Play. And don't forget to like and subscribe. My co-host is gone this week on vacation. We do let him get away every now and then. And that's all good. But it feels a little different that I actually get to say like and subscribe. So don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget to make some comments. We got some questions out there. We want to know what some of your favorite episodes are. We've been, if you haven't been checking out on YouTube, please, man, we keep expanding. We keep adding on to those areas. If you're somebody who listens and doesn't watch and you're using one of the other forms, Spotify or whatever, do us a favor. Make sure you're downloading the episodes and not just listening to them, because that helps us get monetized, and we're like right at the precipice of being able to make some of that happen on that side, and all those little pennies add up. They help out in covering costs. Which reminds me, one more thing: if you haven't already, consider $3 a month then sponsoring us. That's on there on every episode. If you go in the show notes, you'll see a support tab. You hit that, and that will take you to an area, and you can do it as little as $3. I know $3 isn't even a cup of coffee at Starbucks, but we knew that just a little bit here and there would help us cover the cost and help us to build a base here to provide. So at least we're not going backwards as we're doing these, and we hope that you're finding value. We've had a lot of great speakers, and we hope that you're getting a lot of cool stuff, whether it be from the sports side, whether you're hearing it from the faith side. We've had some great missionaries. We just had the Pujols Foundation. Todd was out on our last couple episodes. We got a couple coming up. We got one tonight dropping on divorce, a timely topic of something that's going on in the church rampantly, and how do you handle that, especially if you're the person who doesn't want it and the other person still goes through with the divorce. And we're going to discuss that a little bit. We got a great guy on that, so don't forget to check out those. By the time this drops, your past episodes, and we also got another one coming up. We got one on Sweethearts for Life. This couple's been married forever and a day, so 2 careers worth of marriage, and moving from being in the military to running seminaries to being with family in St. Louis. He has been all over the place, so you'll like Ray and Missy. And then we got another one coming up too that's on biblical transfer of authority in a church. I'm blessed to be at a church where the senior pastor, who started the church after 30 years, turned over the reins to another younger pastor, and after 3.5 years, it couldn't be any more smoother. I mean, you just talk about a guy who's humble, knows, did a lot of research, and he's going to share that wisdom. And hopefully, if you're a pastor or somebody in ministry, and you started in ministry, and that's something that's coming up in your life, or even if not, if you just want to hear. If you're like me, you grew up in churches, and it seemed like every time the pastor left, the next pastor came. Things just it was always clunky. And I would say that you will learn a little bit of biblical wisdom in that. And then we got today. Today, our guest is a return guest. He's been here before. He was one of our first guests back at the beginning when we started the podcast earlier this year. And since then, they had their retreat, and so we got Vic Miller, and Vic has these Wild at Heart men retreats, something that's timely. I mean, it just right now, what's going on in the culture is absolutely crazy, in my opinion. And on top of that, for about the last 30, 40 years, there's been a huge bombardment on masculinity, especially, I believe, masculinity in the church. Somehow we've got a perverted view of what that should look like. And something that about 20 years ago, a friend of mine gave me and challenged me to go through in a difficult time period was the book Wild at Heart. And since then, I've been mentoring and discipling men for years. And it's one of the first books I always take them through, because there's so much. And I always tell people, you can't just do the book. The book is the surface level stuff. You got to go deeper now and get that field manual. That field manual, you fill that out, you go through it. It's going to attack who you are. It's going to make you reveal an awful lot of what's going on in your life spiritually, marriage wise. There's just a lot of great questions, and if you're honest, you're going to find some things that you don't like about yourself and you need to change, and you're going to find some things in that workbook that hopefully will challenge you, and maybe some things that you'll read and go, "Hey, I'm doing that pretty good." And that's hey, We're all in a process of work, and that's okay. That's good. There should be some areas that you do well, and there should be some areas that we all need to work on, because we're all on a journey to become more Christ-like, right, Vic?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, Vic, we already kind of got your background the last episode, but on this episode, I want to start out. You had this retreat; it was great. I've already, I'm on the Facebook site. I see all the different men talking about things. But tell us, how did it go? First of all, and what were some of the highs and lows of this one, and then also, what did the other men think? So
sure. So it's funny you say this is the second time at our boot camp. We have guys that come every time, and we call them repeat offenders. And so I'm a repeat offender of Triple Play.
There you go.
And I like and subscribe. So so now we just did in April our 4th boot camp, and we have done one about every 6 months. And this one we had men from 7 different states and actually 3 different continents. And so it was, and it was one of those we weren't sure what to expect. You never know who's coming and why. And we had some great stuff that happened at that camp. I brought along a couple surveys I wanted to share with you.
Awesome.
Just to kind of read those. So we, at the end of the boot camp, we do a survey just kind of like, are we doing it right?
Yeah, I mean, that's any good place.
Right.
You want to know, kind of get a honest opinion about how things are going, and was it valuable to them, right?
Right, and we don't want to assume. And the first question we ask is, was the message and content what you had hoped for? And this one says more and deeper than expected. Now, what's cool about that is this is a Baptist pastor who's been a Wild at Heart fan for a long time, and that was his response. Another one says more than I expected. Exceeded any and all expectations. Yes, and more so. The message hit my heart and really wrecked me in a good way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I didn't know what to expect. What I received blew me away. And so these are guys that they may have read the book. They may not have read the book. Kind of like you said, the book is powerful. The workbook is powerful. The movie sometimes is even better. And I say the movie, and that's the boot camp. I've had guys that have come to it twice, and they get done with the second one. They said, man, this was more powerful than the first one. And that material was so different. And I'm like, it's the exact same material. Like it was even the same video material, so it was, it is powerful. Very rarely have we had someone go, it's just not for me. The book Wild at Heart, it was written 20 years ago by John Eldredge. And he talks about there's a battle to fight, there's a beauty to rescue, and there's an adventure to live. And when he talks about the battle, some people go, ooh, battle to fight, that's, men want to lord it over. No, it's a battle to fight for your family, for your wives, to honor them and bring them power, for your own spiritual power. So often we want to take and receive our power from our wives, from women, or we go to other outlets, drugs, alcohol. Today, binge watching.
I'd even say video games. Video games are huge right now, and they keep growing. And I find a lot of people go, I'll talk to them, and it's like this false adventure,
right.
And it just, it gives this temporary, high, let's call it, but it's not really the depth stuff. Watching people hike or engaging in a game is different than actual hiking. It's not that those things are bad.
Right.
Okay. But it's kind of like when people go, well, I read the Bible online, and I'm like, that's great.
Right.
But do you have a real Bible? Do you highlight it? Do you pick it up, and do you just get into those pages? Because something is different about that than on an ebook. Not that those aren't valuable. I use both at church. I have a Bible in front of me, and often I'll use the phone to reference stuff and look up Greek Hebrew words because
Right.
maybe while he's preaching I have a question in my mind. Those are all good things, but I think there's a difference between surface level and going deep and false adventures. And 100%, I see the same thing in our culture. And I would even say that when you talked about the battle to fight, that there's this battle to fight is the culture is coming for your kids, man.
Right.
Right now, if you're not seeing that, then you're blind.
Yeah.
Then you're blind, and Satan has got you blind because you just can look anywhere on any advertisement, things that we never would have thought of. Growing up, commercials, the things that are available through multimedia, things that come in your email, the accessibility of all that stuff. I mean, when we were growing up, it was like if a friend's dad went through divorce, all of a sudden maybe they had a Playboy and guys would go and we're going to grab it and go out in the middle of the woods and we'd look at this thing and it would get back to dad before he found out, type of thing. But now it's live on their phone and accessible at a younger age. It isn't 12, 13, 14 young, curious middle school boys that are doing this. It's 7, 8, 9 years old because they're being introduced at such a young age.
Well, and you're seeing, you can accidentally bump into stuff. You can have, I've got 2 granddaughters, 7 and 4, and they could be swiping through YouTube and all of a sudden, boom, there's nastiness that they never expected to see. That it's sad.
Well, and they're even intentionally putting commercials in kids' content, right? I mean, you got kids videos and they'll watch an online and the commercials before, or they'll drop little things behind the scenes, and these things have big meaning.
Oh yeah.
So
Anyway, battle to fight, adventure to live. So interesting, adventure to live. You were just talking about it. There's in one of their sessions they talk about casual adventure, and then all the way up to crucial adventure. And so many of us are kind of into that casual adventure. I'm going to go hike a mountain. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go whatever. And I had a guy on our porch. I've got 3 studies that meet different times. And one of the guys looked at me and he goes, you've been talking a lot about adventure. And he says, I'm just starting to realize that this is different than what I thought it was. He said, I used to be a brigadier general. I've lived every adventure possible. And he said, but this is different. And I said, you're right, because what we're talking about is a spiritual adventure where God is calling us into that adventure. I think last time we talked about the movie The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, where Sean Penn is basically on this poster and he looks at Ben Stiller and he goes like this, like, come into the adventure. And it's like Jesus calling us into the adventure. And that's really, the adventure to live for me is at one point it was, let's go play softball. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. But there's a bigger adventure and we're in the end times and God's going, I need you to come. I need you to get your butt off the bleachers and get into the game. So battle, fight, adventure to live, beauty to rescue. And, the beauty to rescue is would seem obvious. But it's, But in today's world where men are now stay-at-home dads more than ever before, right?
There's been this role reversal that's gone on,
right?
Where women are more and more becoming masculine and taking the masculine duties in the home. Not all that's bad. We're not putting down that a woman should not work, but there's been this really push that men they have an excuse to be lazy.
Yeah.
I think it's really the excuse to be lazy. When you look at it, God designed men. I mean, our curse at the time of Adam and Eve was to work the ground. And somehow we've gotten so far away from that now.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the boot camp was, our last one was amazing. I gave you a few of the testimonies. One of the guys, that came to the boot camp, he's a guy that does podcasts. He's leading other men, Christian men, and doing Christian leadership. And I said to him halfway through the boot camp, I just took him aside and said, "Hey, was this what you expected?" And he goes, "No, not really." And I'm like, "Really?" And he said, "No." He said, I think he was, we do a spiritual boot camp. It's kind of tear down spiritually, not in a negative way. We don't have guys yelling in your face, and it's not we're not waking you up at.
No, it's more inner reflective. You're asking the questions, and if you're being honest at the boot camp, which when you're being out in the middle of nowhere, it's a lot easier to denoise from everything and be distracted, and it's a lot easier to focus on those inner questions that go on that you don't always hear when you're running 9 to 5.
And so he said, it's. He said, I need to have all my guys in leadership, Christian leadership, go through this to heal spiritually before they try to lead other men. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so powerful, And he had, this guy had been raised by a father who had been in jail a lot, and he'd always called this guy Little Timmy, and just said, you're worthless, and
you were on his podcast, right?
Yeah.
We'll put a link to that on our show notes, and that way, if people want to hear that and hear your dialogue back and forth, I thought it was pretty good. I checked it out. So
and it was so cool because he just felt like God was calling him. He says, "You're not little Timmy anymore. You're Big Tim, and I want you to lead other men." With the gospel, you'll do so much more than your dad ever did. Even though his dad was a leader, he was a leader in a bad way. And, so we just saw story after story of where God came through and healed. And I would say the biggest thing that happens at a boot camp, guys are afraid that, I'm going to go to boot camp and they're going to make me join a small group and they're going to make me give my testimony and they're going to do all. No, this is kind of we go, we listen, and then we give, we watch videos, and we give guys a time to stop and what we call a vow of silence, and or you just go off, and we'll maybe give you 1 or 2 or 3 questions that you just take to God. And what I found, if I'm in a group and Josh, you say to me, "Oh, how you doing? You doing okay?" Well, I can BS my way through there. I might be struggling. I might be struggling in my marriage. I may have just had a fight with my wife. I may, whatever. And I can just go, "Yeah, things are good, Josh. We're doing great. And guys, we have our Bible studies on my porch. Guys will sometimes BS their way through that as well. But when we have that vow of silence, and we ask you to say, we say, "Josh, I want you to go and ask God, what does he think of this?" Or, "I want you to go ask God, where are you struggling?" Or, and so now you have quiet time. It's you and God. It's a little harder to BS God than it is to BS Josh. You can, but the all-knowing knows all. And so, and that's the thing.
Really, you're only tricking yourself. When you do that, you're not tricking God, but
right. Exactly. And so a lot of guys, one of their comments is just the fact that they can take time to get away. We do have other activities besides the boot camp stuff, but we often recommend you don't have to go and perform. You don't have to go play basketball. You don't have to go. Take time and just be quiet and listen to God. And we're so busy, we don't have time to do that.
All the other stuff is supplementary. It's
right.
You're there to get God to work on you and to go through these questions. I feel the same way. Like when I take young men through Wild at Heart, we go through the workbook. It's one of the reasons I like to start out there is it addresses salvation, because you got people who grew up in church and maybe have a false sense of their salvation.
Right.
B, most of them have never asked the questions about themselves. That just even understanding those inner questions, or am I really working for God's approval, or am I working for like my father? Am I still trying to earn an approval from my dad that I never got?
Well, that's a question they ask in Wild at Heart. You're hitting right on it. It's the number one question guys generally ask is, do I have what it takes? And we have been told over and over again, no. You know, or you have what it takes, but what have you done for me lately? You know, I need you to do more. I need you to do more, you know, and it's, we hear that from parents. We hear that from, the media, you know, we hear it from a lot of different things. And so that's that question, do I have what it takes? Women ask a similar question. Do you find me beautiful? And that's something they're wanting to hear as well.
And I think they want to be caught up in the adventure, whether they admit it or not. Yeah. There's a reason why, you know, athletes, top athletes, I mean, part of it might be status, but I think there's another part that attracts women, and that is that rough, manly side that is out there, whether it be on the field or in the court. So I think women desire a manly man. They may not always admit that, but I think there's definitely an undercurrent for most women to want that. I'd also say that, you know, it seems like, you know, we were talking about masculinity and it being under attack and kind of leading to where you were there just a second ago. It seems like the church has had two responses too. Yeah. And it seems like one of them is, you know, like waking up, and it seems like there's a segment of churches right now who are going, man, this came, it's crushed us, and we have got to fight back. And so they're engaging men's groups. You know, at our church, we have the Forge. You know, they're encouraging one-on-one men discipleships. They're doing men retreats, like we were talking earlier. And they're encouraging these things because, you know, all the things that are necessary to pass on godly wisdom and knowledge and call out the man in these young men, really. And even older men. You talked about a Bridger, you know, he's experienced everything. There's still something, I think, for all of us. I mean, it's, you know, let the young men dream their dreams, let the older men, and yet I think that there's a reason they come together and they can help and encourage and sharpen one another, right? Iron sharpens iron. If you can get the older guys to try to sharpen the younger guys, and if the younger guys, you run into the struggle in their 20s, I don't need it. You know, I've got it. I'm good. In their 30s, they're going, oh crap, I wish someone would come alongside of me in my 20s because I thought I knew it all, but I don't. And in their 40s, you know, so we get guys, we've had guys from age 14 to 82 that have come to the boot camp, and they've all loved it. But they're getting hit at different ways as well. But churches are struggling, and the other response seems to be too of one that's almost supportive of it. I mean, there's a culture of women dominating and men taking a backseat role, right? Especially in America right now. I mean, you're seeing that more and more, where there's been this big push. We're seeing denominations break up over it. We're seeing some are taking stands on it, some aren't. Yeah. But we're definitely seeing a big, and it seems like those are the two camps, like this more either passive, like, we don't really see that, and or we're engaging it. Yeah, you know, men are terrible, and right. You know, how dare you have arm sweat, and how dare you and guns. I mean, God just would never ever want violence. I mean, he's just a loving God. I mean, it's not that he wiped out Sodom and Gomorrah. This is not a violent God at all. He's a peaceful, loving, holds the lamb type of God. Mm-hmm. You know, that nurturing part. And then you got the other part that we were just talking about, where they're like, man, masculinity is underneath attack. We have got to stand up because we're looking at our boys, and we got young boys starting to wear pink, and there's a problem there. Yeah. Well, and I've had people say, what we do on my porch or on my patio, we probably couldn't do at most churches. Mm-hmm. That's good news and bad news. And some of it's, we're just sitting as a group of guys. It's not a life group with women and children there. It's just a group of guys that are able to share and be open and honest. And that's been the fun part and the healing part. I've had guys that have told me of their struggles in so many different ways that they would never share that in a life group. They would never share that at Sunday morning at church, but they're able to share it at either a boot camp or at just at my house. So that's been amazing as well. You were talking about scripture,
Ezekiel talks about the Lord as a warrior. And that's what you were asking me. What were some of my favorite verses? That one, Isaiah 61 talks about he comes to heal the brokenhearted. There's so many men that are brokenhearted, and we're told to just suck it up and push it away. Don't worry about it. Just move on. And that's been one of the things that's been healing for guys to go, no, let's walk through that. John 10:10 has been an amazing verse for me, where the American church today says, John 10:10 says that I've come that you may have life and life more abundantly. It's all about the life and the abundant life that Jesus brings. But the first part of that verse says the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And so we're always praying for the blessings, but when the blessings aren't there, we want to blame God. And it says, no, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He's screwing with you.
Right.
And yet so many people go, well, God didn't come through for me. I'm just abandoning him. I'm walking away. A lot of our young kids are walking away from God because he didn't come through. And the thief has been screwing with you. Oh, I don't believe in the thief. No, there's an enemy who is doing battle, and he is screwing with your life, and you need to realize who that enemy is, call him out, and then I have come that you may have life and life more abundantly. Christ has come to kick the thief's butt. And, so that's one of the verses that's been powerful for me as well.
I'd even piggyback off of that the church in general has been lax on preaching about our enemy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
We don't really talk about Satan and his game plans and his schemes, and yet we've got this whole book called the Bible, filled with his, a manual to understand our enemy and our weapons.
Right.
And it's like buying the greatest gift. Buying a car. And you could have this Lamborghini that's worth $1 million, but you got to put it together.
Right.
You got this manual.
Right.
But you look at it and you go, that's too difficult. I'm just not going to do it.
Right.
And you give up, and you'll spend the rest of your life trying to earn $1 million when you could turn that car and build it and then turn around and sell it. And all you have to do is follow the manual. It's all there.
Right.
And they won't do it. And it's so amazing to me but I think part of that was the whiplash of the 60s, 70s, fire and brimstone, 50s push. And then I think also that was the next movement of the feminist movement. I mean, what we're seeing right now with masculinity seems to be a culmination, and I say the culmination actually comes to the fact that we now have a president who doesn't know what a sex is. We don't know if male or female is, and that's that confusion there. And yet, the first time in 250 years of presidents that we have that, right? So we've had over 50 presidents, and this is the first one that can't figure out what sex is. But my point isn't to embarrass him, but my point is to say that's just a reflection of the culture. And I think that culture is a mismatch of two major movements. You had the feminist movement, which started out with women's rights and women's voting. But once they got all that, now you got industries built around it. You got to keep the momentum going. And then you got civil rights, and you have civil rights. And then those two came crashing together. On top of that, I'd also say with civil rights leaders, and I point this out to a lot of people. If you look, a lot of the major leaders that were around in the late 90s all became fallen pastors. Okay. I mean, we talk about Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton. These guys had affairs, they got divorces, and they lost the limelight. And they were gone for about, 4 to 5 years, right? And if we look back, most people say, well, that was the greatest 4 or 5 years of race relations in our country. But they came back and they had a new cause. And it's interesting because you look at Jesse Jackson, and his new cause was the Rainbow Coalition.
Right.
And all of a sudden, the questions that we had in the 90s. In the 90s and 80s, we talked about homosexuality, but we would say we're going to find the gay gene. Well, we went through all the genes and DNA, and we found that there was no such thing. And so now you got to find something. Well, it was like Hollywood jumped behind Al Sharpton when he came, and Jesse Jackson when he came out with these things, because obviously it supported a lifestyle that they were all in on over there in Hollywood, and all of a sudden promoting homosexuality, but it was no longer a choice. It was they were born this way, as if they were African American, born with that skin, and all of a sudden that became equated with skin color. And it seems like that is, these movements have continued to push, and now we're to a point where, we don't know what is what. I think I put in our notes to you that I was watching a video the other day. I think it was yesterday. I was watching this video. This guy, have you seen this video of the dog?
I don't even want to watch it.
I wouldn't have either. I think it was on one of the shows I watched, but this guy literally over the past week, it was out. He went and bought a full-on dog suit. Okay. And had it custom made. I mean, we're talking super nice. Like, this is like Hollywood. And he was going around. I don't know if it was his wife or mom, but he had a leash on and he was going around a park and literally being a dog. Okay. I mean, everything a dog did, he was doing. Okay. And kids would come up and people, he literally looked so real that people would come up and thought he was real. And all of a sudden he would, they would figure out he was a man underneath there. And I thought at first it must be a prank thing. Right. But it was, this guy literally has changed his name and he now identifies as a canine. Oh. And has been in his dream his whole life to be a dog. And I thought to myself, how pathetic and how empty must that man be? Right. Where was his dad when he needed him? Right. When we start our boot camp, one of the things that we start out with some movie clips, and one of them is the scene from Saving Private Ryan at the beginning of it, and you just see shooting and bloodshed, and it's really kind of a description of what we're in right now as Christians. There's a lot of, the enemy is firing and he's taking out people left and right, and it's been a sad, it's sad, and yet a lot of guys check out, and what we're trying to do is call people back in and say, no, don't check out. Rescue, it's the rescue of the heart. We're trying to rescue hearts. Kind of reminds you of when Tom Hanks in that movie is looking around and you got men kind of curled up and all sorts of things going on, and he starts rallying, okay, where are we at? And here's what we got to do. And he starts, okay, let's push forward, men. And Eldridge in one of his talks, he says, do you ever feel like you're walking into a movie about 20 minutes late? And you're trying to figure out what in the world is going on, and so often that's what it feels like. And so what we've loved is doing the boot camp, and then also doing the Wild at Heart studies, is just guys being able to come together and be real and to walk together, not to dominate, but to challenge each other to be better men, to pursue their families, to pursue their wives, to pursue their kids, and the same way that God pursues us, and it's real easy to sometimes go, heck with them. Yeah, well. And he says, no, you got to pursue them. And I think, there's ways to be encouraged. I know we were talking about your podcast. I know, and we'll put the link on there, but check out the podcast. Yeah. He does these manly podcasts. I don't know Tim very well, but I know enough that I've seen, and I would just say, if you're somebody who needs that, it may be a podcast, what you need once a week or a couple times a week to encourage you to get in the fight, stay in the fight, keep going and keep pressing in. I know that we have I'm on the Facebook chat scene behind there, and there's lots of great discussions that go on there, and those guys are pulling together at times and doing things. Yep. I think there's a desire for men to get together and work through these things more and more. I think a lot of men are starting to realize this. Yeah. And I would say, and you probably would say this too, it's not too late. If you're listening to this and you're one of those guys, it's not, jump in right now. The time is now, not tomorrow, not the next day. Right. Jump in. And it's not scary. No. Like one of our groups, we're just reading through the book Wild at Heart. And if we come around to you and you go, I really don't like to read, next guy. And then we're just discussing it, and guys are going, oh my goodness, this is amazing. This is challenging me where I've never been challenged. And there's people walking with me that I didn't know. I thought I was in this fight alone. Yeah. I thought my problem was the only one like that. And there was another book that you said too that was good. That was written by one of the guys that's tied into the ministry that you really like, right?
Yeah. So Morgan Snyder is a part of Wild at Heart as well, and he wrote a book called Becoming a King.
That's right.
It's kind of I would say it's Wild at Heart or the 20s and 30s.
Okay.
And so it's, and both he and Eldridge, if you go to wildatheart.org, I always get this wrong. Yeah, it's .org. They have a weekly podcast. John does a weekly podcast on Mondays. Morgan does a probably bi-weekly podcast, and even his John's wife Stacy Eldridge wrote the book Captivating. She does a weekly podcast as well, geared more towards the women, but men listen to it as well because you're trying to figure out the woman.
Absolutely, I did Captivating with my wife, and they got the devotional out there. We've done a devotional.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, there's. And you don't have to necessarily do Wild at Heart. As you just said, there's so many good men ministry books out there.
Right.
One of my favorites was written well before Wild at Heart is a book called Finishing Strong. Steve Farrar. Yeah.
Yep.
I read it probably every few years. It's one of the most encouraging books in my walk, just to remember that, the goal is to finish strong, to keep pressing, and as we talked about, not get beat down. It's easy to get caught in just the minutia of life.
Right.
There's several stories in that book where he talks about how, like Billy Graham, when Billy Graham was first entering the ministry, and was an evangelist, there was like 4 or 5 much more popular evangelists than him at the time.
Right.
And within 10 years, they were all drug addicts, divorced, all these different things, and yet a whole life of Billy Graham. And look at how God used him. Another one was John MacArthur was doing a conference, I think it was in Scotland or Ireland, and these are at the beginning of the book. I mean, this tells you how good. And in the first chapter, you're going to hear these stories, and it talks. It's kind of introducing this idea of finishing strong. And I think it was John MacArthur was either doing a conference in Ireland or Scotland back in, I think it's the 80s, and this guy walked up and said, "Man, I'm so glad you're here. Your dad and those men that came, back in the 60s and shared the gospel, it saved my dad. It led to me, blah, blah, blah. By the way, how's your dad doing? Is he still faithful?" And he said, "Yes, my dad's still faithful." He said, "How about those other guys?" He goes, "Yeah, they fell." What was the difference? All 3 of them were there together. What was the difference between John MacArthur's dad and the others? And it's just finishing strong. It's easy to get spiritually for a period of time, or to walk these things, but then it seems like sometimes we get derailed, and all of a sudden we just let it take us completely out of the game. It's kind of like a pitcher needing Tommy John surgery is how I liken it.
Right.
And in deciding I'm just going to quit versus getting the surgery and getting back in the game and fight, and even sometimes being better. I mean, how many Tommy John surgeries do pitchers come back and they're better than they were before? It's okay that you sin. It is. I mean, not that it's okay in the sense of we don't want to sin, but it's okay when it does happen. Romans says, all sinners.
Right.
So for all have sinned and fallen short of God's glory. But recognizing that and then stopping the habit, confessing it, turning it over to God, getting healing and support, and then jumping back in the game. Don't let it derail you.
Right. Well, and so finishing strong. Another book that's similar to that is Halftime.
Oh yeah, that was the book. Our Todd Perry, we just dropped on Pool House. He was bragging that was a big book in his life that really encouraged him.
Because one of the frustrating things for me has been, how do I take what we're doing and pass it on? And how do we mentor younger men? There are so many young guys that are going, I just need someone to walk with me. Now, they don't know they need someone to walk with them, but when a guy comes along and says, "Hey, let's walk together. Let's do this study together. Hey, join me on Vic's porch," or whatever. But there's a lot of guys that, what does society tell us today? Oh, you just retire and you go to, you move to Florida or you move to Arizona and you go golf the rest of your life, or do nothing. You don't have to work. You don't do anything. And I'm like, no, there is so much more. There's a lot of people I know at my church or at churches everywhere that just say, "I'm just not being fed." And I'm like, no, you need, it's kind of like that movie. I always forget the name of it, but there's that character. He says, "Feed me, Seymour." He's a man-eating plant, and he's like,
Yeah, you're talking about Little House of Horrors.
"Little house," and these. So many people are going, "I just want to be fed." And I'm like, no, get out and feed others. And you will find so much more joy in life when you're out feeding others and walking with others than
And serving them.
and serving them. You're just sitting on the bleachers watching the game and going, well, they're doing it wrong and they're doing it wrong. And I don't like how he preaches. I'm like, get in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like style of worship. I was joking with a couple different pastors, and we were talking about how critical people can be. And I go, the hardest job is a worship leader, I think, because everybody has a different style of worship. It's too loud, too soft, not enough of this. I want more of this. I want it to be more acoustic based. I want more of the band.
Yep.
Give me more praise. Give me more worship. I said everybody because that's. In a day of age where we've got 1,000 music channels, you can go get your Spotify, you can have your YouTube, you can go, think of all the different variations. You have your CDs, your iTunes, all these variations, and we're never satisfied.
Right.
We do Pandora today. Tomorrow we're doing Spotify. We got all these memberships of all these different music, and it's just music, right? And the same thing with what you're talking about with preaching. I think the difference is for a lot of those people is that they're looking at, me first, and then they're just literally, they don't realize it, but they're just analyzing their brain. It's like reading a good book. Well, that's great, but if you never apply it, what good is the book?
Yeah, and that's one of the things with the boot camp. I've seen a lot of guys that have come in to our boot camp, and they'll come up to me halfway through and just go, man, I didn't realize how dead I was, and my marriage is falling apart, and I'm struggling with my kids and whatnot, and just through the process of going over the weekend, guys go, I need to change. It's me. God's working on me, and there's some dead areas that He's now bringing back to life.
Yeah,
and He's rescuing my heart. Where it's so easy to just go, the heck with it. I'm not going to fight for that anymore. I'm not, we try to get our value from the woman, and we try to get our value from others. And it's God saying, no, don't go horizontal. Come to me vertically. I want you to come to me, and I want you to get your value from me and take that strength and then share that with your wife and your kids. And
I like that.
Yeah.
That vertical versus horizontal.
Exactly. It's powerful. Because so often I wanted to get that. I mean, I was taught, you go horizontal. That's what you go horizontal.
Job, career,
everything. Yeah. And it's like, no, come here and then get your strength and then take it out. That's what Tim was saying with his guys and his leadership guys. We need to get our strength here instead of, horizontally. So powerful stuff. Yeah.
That's good. What is the number one reason most men say they come, and what's the number one reason or number one thing that you hear that they get out of it?
Number one reason they come is because I harass them. Just a lot of connections with people I know. Although Wild at Heart has a website that people are going from all over the world and seeing, they're going on and trying to find out, hey, where's a local one? Because their boot camp that they do in Colorado fills up quick.
Right.
They only do 1 or 2 a year. It's a lottery system, and you can't get in all the time. And so they then will point guys to come to our boot camps. So some guys have read the book. Some guys have know people that have gone to the boot camps, and they just go, I just feel like I need to go. The invitation has also been a big part of it. And just what do they get out of it is just a desire to grow spiritually, quit BSing themselves, and grow with God, and learning how to just take that quiet time, and then where can I take that? Can I take that back to our family? Like I said, we have repeat offenders. We got another boot camp coming up in October.
I was going to ask you. So we got another one coming up in October.
26th through the 29th.
Okay.
And it's Eagle Sky, Camp of the Ozarks, which I had a friend of mine describe it as the Bass Pro of church camps.
Well, the cool part is if they've been watching behind us, it pops up every now and then. I put it on as one of the trailers. So we'll also put it in the show notes. But for those who you're thinking of, man, I need to get out. I need to engage. Maybe just get away from the noise of life, right? Your family, everything that's going on, and just get with God.
It's about a 2-hour drive from St. Louis, and
there it is, by the way.
Yeah, and some of the guys have said that as they're driving to the camp, there's a point as they're driving that they go, I'm getting away. And then you drive into the camp. There's a security gate, and after you drive past the security gate, there's bison, fallow deer, elk, and it's a 3-mile drive down to the camp. It sits on 5,000 acres. They could probably hold about 1,000 people there at the camp. And there's 120.
So there's plenty of room for people to sign up and come.
Yeah, plenty of room, and it's very comfortable. I get older guys like myself that'll go, I don't sleep well, at these places. These accommodations are set up nicely. We've got the coffee for you in the morning. We've got good food. We've got plenty of time to rest and relax and just get away and enjoy. And it's reasonably priced. We don't make a thing on this. We just charge you what we get charged by the camps. And so
you mean you're just doing this as a ministry?
Oh yeah, that's what a concept.
To help people out, to help them grow spiritually, because you really just love watching men understand masculinity, understand their calling, and start to grow in the Lord. I mean, those are good things.
Yeah, I've seen what it was done for me. I didn't grow up in the church, but when we got married, we went to church, and all good churches. Some decent men's ministry stuff, but men's ministry is never focused on much in church anymore. It's one of the last things that we focus on. We'll have a men's breakfast or something, and that's about it. And so it was, like I said, it's easy to BS other guys. And when I went to my first boot camp in Colorado back in 2008, God just said, no more BS. It's one-on-one. And it was powerful.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, for those listening, if you want to hear a little more of that story, we had that in, I think it was episode 12 or so when we first started the podcast. So
yes, sir. Go
back and listen. There's lots of clips out there too from that one. That one was super long, so this one's a little bit shorter.
Good deal.
So, but that being said, this is awesome stuff. And for those who hopefully are listening in, maybe you're catching a little bit of this. We got the boot camp coming up. You also said there's a couple other more local ones. So if maybe you just can't get away for the weekend, but you can do did you say there's a breakfast, right?
Okay, so we got, I'll throw 3 things at you.
Okay.
I guess I'm too busy right now. We have, every other week, we got guys meeting on my porch.
Okay.
And we're walking through Wild at Heart. We're doing different things. But if a guy just goes, man, I just need to, I need to get a part, be a part of that. You can come and be a part of that at my house. Just reach out to me.
I'll get them your email address.
Yep.
I'll put it on the show notes.
And then I'm also working with, coming up on September 6th, Daryl Strawberry is coming to St. Charles Convention Center, and he is speaking at the Ministry to Men. It's our 28th annual prayer breakfast.
Okay.
Businessmen's prayer breakfast. And he is going to be speaking there. We go from 7:30 to 9. You can get a table. You can buy individual seats as well for that. And go to ministrytomen.net, and you can find out more information on that. And then there's a group of guys in men's ministry that have just said, we want to work together as teams. And there's a lot of different men's ministries out there, and we've been kind of working together, and we are putting together what's called Men Night of Worship. It's going to be in the St. Charles County area at, I should know this, at a church over there.
Okay, that's okay. But we'll get the details and put in the show notes, but they can join that.
That's going to be on October 6th. It's free. It's just going to be a night of men worshiping. We've got a band that's of different churches that's going to be there. We've got Lenny Barber, who's a pastor up in Ferguson. He's going to give a quick message that night. And so October 6th, I think it's on a Thursday. And so, yeah, that's going on. And then we've got our boot camp at the end of October.
So we've got Bible studies with Vic. If you want to jump into one of those and get involved on a more weekly level.
Every other week we meet.
We'll get you that. And then you got the boot camp coming up in October. We got the prayer breakfast with Daryl Strawberry.
Yep.
And we've got a night of worship. We're going to put all those in the show notes. So we got 4 things going on, not 3. We got 4. But the good thing is there's no excuse. There's something in there that if you're a man, you're listening in, you can get to, you can engage in, and get plugged in, especially if you're going to a church that doesn't have this stuff. Don't wait for your church to get it. Go jump in. Go find a ministry to jump in, and then get yourself where you can lead that ministry. Maybe you go back to that church, and after you go through a study, I always tell when I disciple young men, I usually disciple them for 3 years, and I have a set of books I take them through, and on the 3rd year, I cut them loose.
Yeah.
And I tell them to go disciple a young man.
Exactly.
Go find somebody younger than yourself and go disciple them. And so maybe you need to spend some time in the ministry, getting involved with Wild at Heart, one of these ministries or these multiple opportunities. And then hopefully the plan is, and Vic, you were just saying this, then you go and do and lead, become the next Vic, and you're doing Wild at Heart Bible studies, and you're plugging in so that Vic doesn't have to do all these men's conferences. You can jump in and help lead those with them and take the reins at times, because I'm sure that you would love to have other men who want to help out with that.
Well, I was just talking to a friend of mine who he said, "Hey, did you hear about one of the guys that came to the boot camp 2 times ago?" I said, "No." I said, "What's going on with him?" And a young guy, he said he's leading a Wild at Heart study, has been leading it with a group of guys at his church. And I was like, I had no clue, and so, yeah, be that Paul to another Timothy, and find your Timothy and raise him up so that he can minister as well. So, yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
So,
any final words?
Appreciate what you're doing. Keep swinging and swinging for the fences.
Man, we got the triple play, right? We got triple play
going on.
God, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
I missed Scott today. I was looking forward to talking a little baseball with him, but no, that's
a lot going on right now. Right before we walked in, I was seeing the Cardinals made a lot of moves. We'll talk about those in a minute, but I'll tell you what.
The fire sale.
I don't know about the fire sale. I think this is a good thing. This is good for them, but that being said, well, listen, if you've been listening in, we appreciate it. We want you guys to continue to hopefully be blessed by this stuff. Jump into game. Don't sit on the sidelines, whether it be at your personal church, your own church, or jumping into one of these ministries, or maybe grabbing a buddy of yours and saying, "Hey, let's go check out this Wild at Heart retreat, man. Let's get together and you and I go do this together." And that would be awesome. I guarantee you'll make some memories. You'll be blessed by it. And on top of that, we're looking forward to hearing some more stories after the fall one. We're definitely going to get Vic in here again, and we're going to continue talking about this, because this continues to be one of the number one issues in the church and in the culture right now is masculinity and men understanding their place as young men, as boys. And also as older men, and our place, it could be in the church, it could be in our homes, it could be in our jobs, it could be everywhere.
Right. So
we're going to keep talking about this. This is going to be coming up more and more. But in the meantime, don't forget to, what they got to do?
They have to like and subscribe, and also go to wildheartstl.com to check out what we're doing. And what else? Sign up and donate. That was the other.
All those are good things. And with that, we'll catch you next episode.
Thanks, Josh.
And
You're safe.